Alright, so I injured my thumb at basketball yesterday, and I have been in pain all day, but I have been playing Elden Ring all day for you guys so that I can make these Arcane builds. I've put together 3 very different Arcane builds for you guys to try and to tinker with yourselves. So, let's go. Let me know in the comments your favorite Arcane builds or some different Arcane builds. Arcane's a weird stat. I kind of ignored it for builds when I was originally making builds for Elden Ring, and that was because it was bugged, and then I never went back to it. But this is really the first time I've really sat down and thought about trying to make proper Arcane builds. So I've got 3 here. They're very different in the way that they play, but I think they're a lot of fun, each one of them. So we'll start out with the Sacred Shield. Now, this build focuses on Mogwyn's Sacred Spear and the unique Blood Boon Ritual skill. This weapon does physical and fire damage and blood loss buildup, so all the things that we really like with Arcane builds. The white mask will give you extra damage when blood loss is around you, so we're also wearing that, as well as having a little bit of investment into faith, mainly so that we can have Flame grant me strength, because that buffs physical and fire damage, which are the 2 main types of damage that this weapon does. Your primary attack will be just holding your shield up and poking with the spear, because it's a piercing weapon. You can hold your guard while poking with the spear.
Now stand back, I gotta practice my stabbing.
So you'll use that pretty much most of the general enemies that you see, especially when you're just fighting one-on-one. You'll just keep your shield up and poke away. And then in situations where there's AoE or maybe a boss or something, you will use the Blood Boon Ritual for the massive AoE attack that it does, that causes explosions of blood. You can increase the damage you do with this with Shard of Alexander, or even reduce the cost of it with Carrion Filigree Quest, but there's plenty of flexibility in putting this build together. Your main stats for this build are Arcane and Strength, primarily Arcane, but you will need a bit of strength so that you can wield the Sacred Spear, as well as wield a Great Shield, which we're using in this build. Now, depending on your Great Shield, that will change. I personally am using the Icon Great Shield, which will give you a little bit of health back, just gradually restoring your health while using it. Now, this shield doesn't have 100% physical damage negation, it actually has 95, which is so close to 100 that it's barely noticeable, the tiny little bit of chip damage that you do take. But because you're constantly getting that health back, it actually outweighs some of that chip damage. But you can realistically pick any shield as long as it doesn't have a weapon skill on it, which is the key thing, because we want our Ash of War to be the Blood Boon Ritual, not whatever our shield's Ash of War is, if that makes sense. So other than that though, the Mogwyn's Sacred Spear is your primary weapon. You're obviously going to level this up, whatever, and you're going to be using the Dragon Communal Seal because this stacks with Arcane, and it does stack with Faith as well, but primarily Arcane is our main scaling, and it gives you S Arcane scaling, so you're going to use this primarily. White Mask, as mentioned, to increase your damage when blood loss is applied. Armor-wise, anything that really allows you to medium roll, as well as having a bit of poise. Poise is always valuable with a build like this, as well as keeping your resistances high. For your talismans, I would be going with the Lord of Blood's Exaltation to increase your damage when there is blood loss around you, because poking with the spear will apply blood loss. You could go with the Fire Scorpion Charm here, but I ended up switching this out for the Green Turtle Talisman for that stamina recovery for when you're holding that shield up, so you can get that stamina back more quickly. And I would also go Shard of Alexander, so you can increase the damage of the Blood Boon Ritual, and the Curved Sword Talisman, because when you're holding that shield and you can either poke with it, or if you block, you can do guard counters and get a lot of damage off with guard counters. I've gone that direction because you can get a lot of stagger with guard counters as well. So there's a few variations that you can make with this build in terms of its shields or what talismans you use, but this is the general setup that'll get you going. I've also been running the Bestial Vitality Incantation because it requires no more investment in faith, and it gives you more health back just like the shield does, so you just get little bits of health back in all kind of encounters. The Dragon Priest is the next build. Now, this one was honestly a challenge. I knew I wanted to do something with the Dragon Incantations because of the Dragon Communal Seal, which stacks with Arcane and Faith, and it gives bonuses to the Dragon Incantations, but there isn't a weapon that really fits with like a dragon build, because there's no weapon that scales with Arcane and Faith. There's some that scale with Arcane and there's some that scale with Faith, and then obviously there's weapons that don't scale with either, but there isn't anything that fits neatly into this build. And because the Dragon Priest spells or incantations are really slow to get off and they have such a wind up time, I couldn't find a way that I really wanted to put this build together. But I found something that I like, and there's some variations that you can do or change depending on how you see fit. So we're using the Antspur Rapier here. Now this has Scarlet Rot buildup on it by default. I've put the Seppuku Ash of War on it, which when you stab yourself, you cause blood loss on yourself and add blood loss to the weapon while increasing your attack power, and I've put this as a poison variant so that the rapier also applies poison. So after applying seppuku on yourself, you essentially have 3 status effects on the weapon alone, being poison, blood loss, and scarlet rot. Now, the main 2 here really are the scarlet rot and poison, because they're the 2 that I want to focus on mostly for this build. Now, I'm using the mushroom crown here as a way of further increasing my attack power, and because there are dragon incantations that apply poison or even scarlet rot with the Exeek's decay, or however you say that, you know what I mean. When you apply that status effect, you'll increase your attack power even more, and it's kind of using a similar methodology to like the poison samurai build, right, where you're applying these poison and effects, but instead here we're applying poison and scarlet rot. You only get that damage or attack power increase when one of them is applied, not if you have both applied separately. It's just one or the other, but you still get that damage increase, right? So really what I'm focusing on here is using the dragon incantations as their slow wind-up times, their big damage dealers that they are, using Golden Vow to buff them a little bit more, and then using the Antspur Rapier just against general trash mobs, because realistically there's no point in using the dragon incantations on trash mobs. They take so long to use and to wind up, and it's just kind of a waste of your FP because they are so FP hungry. But I'm basically using it for that method. Now, because they are so slow as well, combining it with the Antspur Rapier allows you to get attacks off quicker, because that weapon has such a fast attack speed just with the poke. I'm also using a shield here so that I can hold the shield up and do little pokes behind the shield, you know, that kind of stuff that I like. So there's a lot of flexibility here. You could go even further into the Faith and into the dragon incantations and go down that line, or even go around the status effects that we're kind of tinkering with here, but this is what I've decided. Now, I did try like the Ripple Blade because it just purely stacks with Arcane, and then we just could focus on Arcane and Faith, and the Ripple Blade does do more damage, but I just don't like the move combos for it, and it just doesn't feel like it fits, so that's why we've gone with this direction. Now, our stats here are Arcane and Faith primarily. You don't need heaps of Faith, like around the 36 mark, just so you can make sure you can use all the dragon incantations is fine, and then maximize your Arcane. If you really want to focus on the Rapier, you will want to put more points into dexterity that I have here, but I've essentially just put enough points into dexterity so that the weapon is viable, as we're not necessarily focusing on the damage the weapon does, but the effects that it applies, the status effects. So you want to focus on applying the status effects, not just using it as a physical weapon to apply damage, if that makes sense. The Dragon Communal Seal is what we're using here to increase the damage of our dragon spells. Armor-wise, the Mushroom Crown, and then anything else that really gives you a lot of resistances, as well as giving you high amounts of poise, because you will take damage while trying to get these dragon spells off. I'm using the Lord of Rot's Exaltation here to increase my damage even further when there is poison or rot in the area. I was originally using Lord of Blood's Exaltation, but you can switch here to the Assassin's Cerulean Dagger, so when you do critical hits, you can restore your FP back, so you can get some without having to use your flask to get some back. Faithful's Canvas Talisman to increase the potency of your incantations, because we are casting a lot. And I'm also using the Dragon Quest Great Shield Talisman here to increase my physical damage negation, because you're going to take a lot of damage with this build, so any way you can mitigate that is highly valuable. Realistically, for your spells here or your incantations, all of the dragon things that you can use, Dragon Claw, Dragon Maw, Rotten Breath, Exeek's Decay, all of these are fine and fit within this build, but really you want to focus on the Decay Breath and the Rotten Breath so that you can apply Scarlet Rot and Poison to the enemies. The last build is the Pole Dancer. I couldn't really think of a good name for it, so we're going to go with that. And I've already done a Rivers of Blood build in my Dexterity video, so go watch that if you're looking for something like that. But I wanted to do an Arcane Dex variant, and this is what I've landed on for this video. So what we're focusing on here is using Eleonora's Pole Blade and the unique effect that that weapon has with its skill being the Blood Blade Dance. This is going to be your primary attack, and it does physical and fire damage as well as blood loss bleed up. Essentially think of this as a twin blade variant on a Rivers of Blood build. Its functions very similar. So the white mask we're wearing to increase damage when blood loss is applied. You can also add 15 faith to this build to use Flame Grant Strength to increase your physical and fire damage. I am dual wielding with a second twin blade in my offhand with seppuku applied here so that I can apply blood loss on myself, as well as dual wield these weapons for like power stancing with them. You can just two-hand Eleonora's Pole Blade in encounters, as well as the twin blades do have such a fast like attack animation that you don't necessarily need to have two, but it allows you to have seppuku on that second one, and then if you just want to get rid of it, you can just two-hand the one in your right hand. I'm also using the Dragon Communal Seal here with the Flame Grant Strength, Swarm of Flies, and the Dragon Breath, just as a couple of spells because we've got that 15 faith, so you can use Swarm of Flies to apply blood loss from range. It's always good to have a ranged option, which is why I like having Swarm of Flies in this build, but it's really up to you. For your stats here, Arcane and Dex are your primary stats, as well as Vigor, Endurance, and Mind being your secondary. As long as you got 15 Faith, you will be fine there. As mentioned, Eleonora's Pole Blade is what we're using. You can dual wield with a Twin Blade if you want to, as well as the Dragon Communal Seal. For your talismans, I'm wearing the Lord of Blood's Exaltation to increase my damage when blood loss is around. Rotten Winged Sword Insignia because of Blood Dancer's Ash of War. Because you do multiple attacks, you get that successive attack to increase your attack power. You can also get multiple of these off without like kind of taking damage because of the way you kind of leap around. You leap forward, deal some attacks, then leap back, then leap forward again. You can avoid some attacks just because of the way the hitboxes work, which is really nice. Carrion Filigree Crest to reduce the cost of the attack, and Shard of Alexander to increase its damage is how this build really fits together. Now that is all my Arcane builds. Let me know in the comments what you think of these different builds. Thank you for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.